around, and I think the grandma may be doing more childcare or like parent roles for this child. So a lot of it was relying, I think, heavily on the grandma to help, because that's the other thing. Like they live pretty far away from, well, I mean, like they live on the beach. So the grandma and the kid had been there for, I think, at least 48 hours probably. So the grandma was like the constant person who was there to like keep him company. So until we could probably, I think we tried to find him a bed into, we tried to probably find him in a bed in inpatient, just because there's not, and that's the other thing I've really realized is if you live anywhere outside of like Portland, you're kind of, it sucks to be you if you have a mental health crisis.
Yep.
It was from Tillamook, so like I don't think there was like really any opportunities for him to like get anything. Hopefully stabilize him, either get him on medication, talk to have like him work through some of that trauma, and then try to figure out also like during that time period where's a safe spot for him to go and kind of like have allow DHS to do their thing. But
My goodness, I worked until.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that one's a hard one.
Yeah.
I push record just in case I can
Okay.
snip stuff, and if we find
Okay. I mean, I have another thing that we can talk about. It's not necessarily ethical issues, but it's an, so there was a case where, so everyone knows that there's the California fires. I don't know if they're still going on. But what happened was level 3 trauma, I'm assuming, because he lives in like a small town in Northern California, but because of all the fires, they couldn't life flight him to any place in California, so they life flighted him up to OHSU.
Oh wow.
Yeah. The issue though, and I think this is it, the biggest issue was when you get life flighted, you don't get a ride back to wherever you're coming from, or like a ride back to where you're going. So he got seen, he was stabilized, everything was fine. Life flighted, so he didn't have a wallet, he only had his phone on him. And he couldn't get back from where we were to his hometown. So the other issue with his case was he's California like Medicaid, and but it overlapped, so he didn't like follow up on it, and he lost his Medicaid on like October 1st. So like Medicaid, who normally would allow for like at least transport from like where he was, and sometimes that's what we've been able to do is like when an ambulance comes in our area, we're like, oh, you brought them in, and so you need to be able to take them out. But we rely on like, or the ambulance charges their billing company or like their insurance. So this kid couldn't also like as an option. So it was so much scrambling of like, okay, so what do we do? Because like this kid didn't choose to come here. He just couldn't go down to California where he is to the closest the hospital because they were overworked with all these fire. Did but like what can you like, that was just a really hard thing to wrap around, like not by choice and doesn't have any of his items.
like I wonder if there's overlap of like, I don't know, FEMA or like a different like policy rather than the state policy when there's a state of emergency.
And yeah, I mean, we didn't look into any of those things, but I mean, was the fire even counted as a state of emergency?
Yeah.
Did it actually get to a state of emergency?
Yeah, Governor Brown made it a state of emergency.
Okay.
So like the normal rules or policies don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what so did they help him problem solve at all?
Yeah, so what ended up happening, and partly because of his situation where it wasn't necessarily like he was forced to. Sometimes I think with his situation that he was forced to come up here and has like no family around here. OHSU did a charity ticket
Oh.
to Weeds, but the issue was that was still 30 miles from his hometown. And for some reason, this kid, since he had his phone, luckily, he was able to call like friends and families. And that was the other thing that was just really disheartening for me. But none of his friends and family that he was contacting that actually responded back to him was willing to go like 30 or 40 miles to go pick this kid up. And the bus wouldn't leave until, so this was on like Friday-ish. They let him stay till Saturday at OHSU, but they weren't willing to, but they couldn't keep him till Sunday, and the bus wouldn't run until Monday. That goes his way. So he was either like gonna have to stay in a shelter in Portland, and they kind of were like, well, we can't like let you stay over here, but also like he's uninsured and staying in a hospital in the ED, like that's gonna be a crap ton of money already. Like it's not like you might as well go try to get a hotel bed or something instead. Yeah, or like pray your family's gonna get back to you by Saturday. Jane was taking a ticket on Saturday, and then I don't know if he ever contacted his friends or family. Someone say yes, they will go pick him up instead of leaving him in Humboldt or in Weeds for like a whole day without like money. Because OHSU was like, well, we paid for your ticket. That's all we can do, unfortunately. They probably gave him a sandwich, but yeah.
Wow, that's a really unusual thing.
Well, and it certainly doesn't feel very good that
No.
he was sort of this victim of circumstance, and then like the system that he was thrown into was kind of like sorry, not sorry, for a lack of a better
Yeah,
word.
I was like, sorry, we can only do this much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to go through this worksheet on that?
Sure.
What characteristics of your identity were most important to the incident or to the worker's identity? I'm not sure whose identity we're talking about.
Well, I think it's supposed to be yours because it's a critical self-reflection, but I'm not opposed to like doing it as the other worker, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if we were in that situation, that was a scenario, what would our biases be, essentially is what it's asking us? Or our identities?
Mm-hmm. And like he's in poverty and he's kind of falling through the system, and like now he's like across in a different state, but it's in a state of emergency, so a different policy would take effect. So they were able to patch up and get him back, but then not having to stay in a shelter because his family couldn't, or a friend, or was it that they were just not financially able to, or?
That's where it got a little confusing in the situation because his family or his friends, I don't know who he was trying to contact, from the nurses that were watching him. Mm-hmm. He was contacting and calling a lot of people, and either no one answered or they were like, oh, I can't. And maybe like they didn't have a car themselves or money. We didn't really go into that kind of thing.
How old was he?
So 19.
Okay, so fairly young.
Yeah.
Did anyone contact a family member? I mean, did a social worker, or was it just him trying to contact?
Actually, I don't think, looking back, trying to think back to his paperwork, he may not have actually listed a family as an emergency contact. Because he was brought in as a trauma, he would have been contacted and life flighted to let them know where he was, what the situation was, and if anything was happening to him, they would have that kind of person to like say like, what do you want to do? Would this person want to have life sustaining like treatment on him, or would he rather like not have that happen? So a family member or someone he would have wanted to would have been contacted at some point.
So what is your perception of how he interpreted your identity?
He was, oh, sorry. I was like, he self-identified Latino, Hispanic. So.
And was there any language barriers, or
he spoke English.
Yeah.
I wasn't there when he came in, so I don't know if his like primary contact spoke Spanish though. But the person that should have, actually that's a lie. My person who's there from like 6:45 in the morning to 7 speaks fluent Spanish. However, the one weird thing about OHSU is our interpreters. I don't know how it is for child welfare, but I do know like wraparound, we would hire someone and it would be in person. OHSU doesn't have an in-person person. They rely entirely on phone calls. Interpreter isn't ever in the room physically.
So my
sorry.
I was just going to say, think about being the client and going through all this, and if he hadn't been speaking English, having to
that would have been
interpretive services via a phone. You're scared. You're obviously maybe don't have familial support, or you have familial support, but because now you know you're in the midst of white people who are doing whatever, maybe your family is scared. And in this day and age, I don't blame them for maybe not wanting to be involved just in case.
Yeah.
Right. No, definitely true.
I mean, we could definitely go off on, I mean, he could have been really scared, but I bet his family could have been even more scared just because of what might have been going on and the implications that, you know, oh, great, now we're going to be on a deportation list, or we're going to go pick him up and ICE is going to be there, or who knows?
That's a good point.
Well, I mean, or I'm looking at it through my white lens too. So, I mean, maybe I'm naturally thinking that everyone that's of Latino descent is thinking now that ICE wants them. I don't know.
I think, and I don't know either, but there's definitely a lot of fear. Do you guys, any of you, go to the like know your rights and things like that? I feel that happened all last year.
Oh yeah.
There would just be like, like groups of Latinos or like Muslims who are going to them. I went to the Latino specific ones, and they like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And everyone's like, well, we don't really know, which doesn't help because no one really knows like how is ICE really operating. Trump kind of gave them like a you can pick and choose kind of situation.
Yeah. So maybe those are some accurate interpretations that maybe he has.
I mean,
you're getting, I also would agree that probably if you're getting random phone calls, especially in this time where you don't recognize the number or the state that's calling you, like I wouldn't want to answer it. I don't answer it anyways.
Do you know if his family was aware that he was life flighted to another state?
They should have. I mean, OHSU does contact that number, and we do leave a message to say, hey, out for this person, but I guess that could also play an effect where you're like, I don't really know. I've never had an ICE phone call, so I wouldn't know really like and what not to trust. I feel like I don't even know how life flighting officially works. Normally, people at the scene of the situation, and also he was the only one who came to us specifically. So I don't even know officially what happened and why they picked, why it was only like one person, if it was like more like a car accident. He was fine day. I think he had a head, neck, and he may have had a fall. So I don't know if it was at work or what his situation was, because I do know that wearing a neck brace So.
That's crazy that he had to come all the way.
But he was able to walk around.
Wow.
So how about skipping ahead to what biases existed in my actions? Because you talked about how you felt sad that no one would come pick them up, but like based on our discussion, well, maybe they're afraid of like identifying as being deported, like so that could reveal like there's reasons why they weren't able to pick them up. Or
I'm also curious, and this is, I guess, yeah, this is a personal bias. I mean, are you guys from around here?
I'm from Portland.
Okay. So you guys, but you know, like Humboldt and like that area also is like the weed capital of like the world. So part of me also is like, maybe
they were all stoned.
Well, that could be something, but I don't feel like that would stop them from coming. But I was also like, again, like he would rat them out, like that they're
Okay.
There's all these like marijuana farms, or like also I do know like I've had friends from Oregon and like Portland area who are like going down and trimming. So this could be like a high time right now for trimming. So those people also don't have like the days off to like maybe come out and get him. But my kind of thought was like something possibly with weed is going to be going on and why they can't get him possibly.
Okay. So you're kind of saying you had a bias maybe that he was engaged in criminal stuff and that's why no one was going to come support him.
Oh, I also thought that too, which I was like, maybe like they are selling, they don't want to like get involved in over here. Like, I don't know. That was kind of my thought.
Well, and
and that was just based on Humboldt. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, and then earlier you said something about, or maybe it was you, Ema, that said something about poverty, and maybe we don't really know that, and that was one of our biases too, is like that this kid, because he didn't have a support system, we're assuming that he's coming from a place of poverty, and maybe he really isn't.
I mean, there's no support system, and I also think the fact that he was on like California's Medicaid linked to poverty, but like he could make a decent amount of money, but it's all under the table, so they don't really report anything.
Sure.
He could have a support system. Supposedly, he had a lot of phone calls to like people to reach out to. Huh?
He had a lot.
The nurse had mentioned. The nurse mentioned that he had a very extensive list of people to call, so he was surprised that no one had responded in a positive way of like, yeah, sure, I'll pick you up. Though there also was a confusion, like the nurses definitely, or the doctor had a bias about possibly him not being super, because when they were like, oh, you're 30 miles away from where you're trying to go, for us that's going from like Hillsboro to Gresham. No, how far is 30 miles would be to like Hood River. But he was like, that's so far, like going 30 miles. So for them, they had a perception of him not being well traveled. And then like kind of being like almost like a.
Well, if you don't have a vehicle, that's pretty far to walk. And if the buses are, you wait till Monday and stay in a shelter, that there's all those barriers that a person who has a car doesn't think about. Like, oh, I'll just get in there. I'll just, I'll just.
And I think they had a. I felt like they thought he had a car. I guess yeah, they definitely came from like a privileged stance. Like everyone has a car. So
definitely
you should be able to do it.
How did you influence this situation through your presence, actions, preconceptions, assumptions, and other people's perceptions, and your physical well-being on that day?
I mean, I definitely think the social workers were very, the fact that we're trying to advocate to make sure, I mean, it ended up falling on the social workers' shoulders to make sure to figure out his ride situation and what was the best that they could offer. And that would be within OHSU's, like, I think they probably were pushing up a little bit against the bubble of like what OHS normally does, but they were like, we want to make sure that we can, they were more willing to advocate for him to get a Greyhound back at least to California as far as they could get him, versus some like other situations that they've talked about. So there was a lot more like advocating for his behalf of why this child deserved to get a bus ticket. Yeah, I don't feel like the nurses or providers would have really known what to do about it if he came up. They were like, oh, he's fixed. So now we should get him out and have this bed turned over. Like,
right.
It's a crappy situation.
Yeah, definitely not.
But, yeah.
And I think that's good that you're worrying. I mean, like normally it wouldn't be within the hospital policy to worry about what they do once they're discharged, but like you're worried about what he'd do once he get off the bus and then to get to his hometown and being stranded there. So that was an extra logistic, which wouldn't have been a barrier to most people. And so you were able to work through that.